Hello and welcome to another brand new episode of CPOV Autographs. I, of course, am Matt, aka Stormageddon. And really quick, before we get into the newest episode, I just want to shout out the most recent episode of Fun and Games Podcast, a video game podcast I do with the incredible Jeff Moonen. The most recent episode, as of when you are listening, if you were listening to this the day it came out, is our panel from FlameCon. It was really cool to go to FlameCon, hang out with some folks in person, and do that awesome panel on queer-coded villains in horror games. If you want to check that out, you can go to Fun and Games Pod on all social media, or just look up Fun and Games Podcast on your podcast platform of choice. On to this episode, I am reunited with a very good friend and one of my favorite rappers. The incredible Schäffer The Darklord is my guest to talk about his newest record, The Derelict Craft, as well as quitting his day job and pursuing art full time, working on his Patreon, having monthly goals, going back on tour as the pandemic gets better but is not over yet, and more. So instead of me reciting what we talked about, I will just give way to this incredible episode with my friend, the brilliant, talented, and very handsome Schäffer The Darklord. Let's do this thing. I'm so excited. I'm chatting with my good friend, Schäffer The Darklord. Schäffer, welcome back to the show.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for having me back on the show.
It's been a minute. A lot of us have been doing a lot of things in quarantine besides growing beards and getting aged and older. You decided to work on a record and start a Patreon. And so we're of course going to talk about The Derelict Craft, which is your brand new full-length record, which of course is also a concept record like your last one, but very different from the last one. And I think my first question is, before we go into like the Patreon and other stuff, with The Derelict Craft, you released a lot of these songs as like demos to your patrons to like get the vibe before you put the album together. How much of the concept of this album did you know before you started?
That's a good question. I knew quite a bit of this concept before I started demoing those tracks. I originally started working on the album, at least started working on conceptually working on the album as far back as 2018.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Which started when I'd asked my friend DJ Robo-Rob to make me some beats. And I'd specifically requested that he make me really weird beats. I was like, I want to hear really weird, futuristic, broken, insane beats that sounds like, that'll sound like nothing I've ever heard before, because I've got this science fiction concept album in mind that I want to write to. And so he, one night in 2018 he'd stayed up all night. I guess I'm going to be blowing up his spot, but he told me then he stayed up all night on Molly, just making some insane sounds. And he sent me this folder of beats that absolutely hit the mark. It was absolutely incredibly bizarre stuff. And I probably, like, within that first month, I wrote hooks for 2 of the songs that ended up on the album. And then over the next couple of years, I had gotten distracted with other projects, and I wasn't working on it as consistently. And then in probably late 2019, I think, is when I first started recording demos of the album for Patreon. And at that point, Rob had gotten a new job that was a lot more demanding, and he didn't have the time to really kind of commit to rebuilding some of these crazy demos. And so I started sourcing elsewhere for beats for the record. But yeah, I think as early as 2018, I had the concept in mind, the bare bones concept in mind for the album. And then over a couple of years of quarantine on Patreon, I was releasing demos, and I was doing them out of sequence. And I was specifically altering lyrics here and there because I didn't want to give away that I was writing this song about space, or this record about space. And, but I kind of always knew what I was doing.
I love that. I mean, like, we're going to talk about the concept a bit because I've listened to it a lot. I mean, you know how much I love your stuff. And so, like, I spend a lot of time with it. You're welcome. I spend a lot of time with it, and I'm like, I know he's going to quiz me. He's going to know my theories. And I have some, but most of them are very surface level.
Sure.
But, like, it is very apparent this is obviously influenced by quarantine. I mean, like, obviously isolation is a big part of it. Before we go into the nitty gritty of the concept, I do want to shout out previous guests of this show, Betty Brash and Abe Goldfarb, which are just a couple of the voices.
Oh yeah.
On your. I love that I turned, and I think I tweeted this. I turned on the record, and within seconds, I'm like, oh, my good buddy Abe is on this record because I know he was a voice. I think he was one of the cops on the last concept.
He was an EMT.
Oh, he's an EMT. That's
but
right.
Also, he played an EMT in one skit on Sick Passenger. But also, he did some writing on Sick Passenger. I'd written all of those skits, and then I went to him and I was like, "Just help me make this make sense." And he punched them up and he made them a lot tighter and he added some jokes. And then when I recorded with another voice actor for Sick Passenger, Abe was here to direct those sessions. So
that's amazing.
Yeah, he was a lot more involved in Sick Passenger than just voicing that one character in one skit. But it was really important to me because this album feels like kind of a spiritual successor to Sick Passenger. It was very important that I brought back as many people as possible to work on it.
Yeah, I honestly didn't know Betty Brash had worked on it until I opened the Bandcamp.
That was great. I knew, again, going back to as far as 2018, I knew that there was going to be a part for somebody who could speak Chinese and somebody who could speak Russian.
Right.
And just one day on Facebook, I saw her post something about how her Russian had gotten a little rusty and she was practicing it again. And I kind of flipped because I was like, somebody I know speaks Russian. Great.
I love that. I also for me, it's funny because Abe did an incredible podcast narrative show a little while back called Steal the Stars. And he played this douchey tech bro, guy obsessed with space. To see him doing another kind of space related thing as a recruiter, go to the stars, in my mind just continues the Abe Goldfarb narrative of he's just some schmuck who gets involved with space programs.
Sure. I also knew that he shared an affinity with me for sort of the kind of existential science fiction films of the late 60s and 70s, 2001 and Alien and whatnot. And so I kind of knew that this would be right in his wheelhouse.
Amazing. So I want to talk, before we go into the concept, a little bit about the sound. I've been listening to your stuff for a long time, and you've always experimented with genre, but never like this. I mean, you have a doo-wop song on here. You have several punk songs. Because I know you, I know the drummer is basically about you. It's basically about how much you love being a drummer. And the fun thing for me is that I got to send that track to a friend of mine. There's a band that used to play at the Way Station called the Wasties, and my spouse used to sing in them.
Oh, yeah.
And their drummer, Alex Bell, has worked in a bunch of other bands. And so the minute I heard this album, I sent him that track. I was like, this is for you, bud. Was that something you've always wanted to do, is kind of, because you've dabbled a little on previous records, but this is, I think, the most you've broken outside of the nerdcore and just rap and hip hop in general.
Yeah, and that was also that was a plan as much as the narrative concept of the album. Again, going back as far as 2018, is that I knew that I wanted to do a record that really played with genres, but also challenged me to work outside of kind of my comfortable formulaic patterns. I knew that I wanted it to be a little all over the place, and so I specifically sought out instrumentals at times that were going to be a lot more challenging, that were going to make me try out sort of trap styles and like you said, the doo-wop style. And so there were a number of those things I'd kind of always known that I wanted to do, which is why I'd given Robo Rob those notes in the beginning, give me stuff that sounds like something I've never heard before, because I don't want to be comfortable.
Was that because you wanted to challenge yourself, because you were bored, because you just wanted to move in a different direction? Where does that come from? The
idea, well, it actually ties into the concept, which was, and I know we're going to get to this, and now the concept I know very strongly reads as though it is informed by the pandemic and by us being in quarantine, because it's all about this character who's in isolation. Right. But the idea was always, I think as far back as when I'd first gotten those beats from Rob, I was already kind of interested in exploring the idea about isolation, because in that year I was spending more and more time by myself. I still had a day job, but I was really, really kind of isolated, and I kept kind of saying these things to my peers, all I ever really want is to be left alone. That's it. All I want is people to leave me alone so I can make weird stuff. And then when I'm ready, I can present it to them. And so the idea, the concept was, I wanted a character who was then isolated, who then had to re-examine their own craft, if you will, by
I see what you did there.
Without having, I mean, that was the idea. That was an intentional double entendre. To have somebody like explore what their art is and try to break out of a pattern of just kind of doing the same thing all the time. So all of that was already in place before quarantine, and this intentional idea to try to do things differently than I had done in the past. And then the pandemic came along and was like, hey, if you want to be a method actor, now you can really do it. You're going to be really isolated while you write these songs slowly for an audience.
It's crazy to me that the idea, like the kismet of the idea happening, kismet I guess is the right word, and then actually having to go through a pandemic as well is just kind of wild to me, because I had assumed, like, because I remember that the Patreon had started before the pandemic, because I joined shortly after it started, and I was like, okay, you know, I was so excited that you were quitting your day job, which is important. We'll talk about that later. But like, and that you were working on this, but like the fact that you started this a little less than a year before the pandemic actually hit is just wild to think about.
Yeah, and I can say all day that, like, yes, the concept predates the pandemic and predates quarantine, but working on the material during the quarantine and during pandemic definitely informed it. It changed the shape of it a little bit, and it made it it turned it into something that made it a little bit more universal for an audience, because the record's coming out at the same time we're all kind of coming out of quarantine. And I definitely now is reflective of the experience of going through that, although that wasn't the original model for it.
Yeah. I mean, what's interesting this time too, because again, I've spent a lot of time with your music, but specifically Sick Passenger, because I related to a lot of the music in that. You know, there are some very emotional topics on that record, and like all of the sketches between every few tracks, also deeply personal and very well acted. And like this time, there's less, like, not even are there less skits, but also the skits are songs. Whereas previously the skits were mostly skits, except for the intervention one, which was a skit song.
Right.
Here, there's clearly concerted effort to bookend it, but you want the music to do the talking this time.
Yeah, I felt that I'm still satisfied with how Sick Passenger came out 9 years ago, but I have found that when I go back and want to revisit it, I don't listen to the skits. And it's kind of like when I go back and listen to, like, you know, my favorite De La Soul records, there's a lot of those skits were amazing the first dozen times I heard them, but I'm not replaying them.
Right.
And so originally when I had this album mapped out, there were going to be a lot more skits. It was going to be my character speaking to this robot character in between, you know, every couple of songs. But I decided to scrap those. I wrote a number of them. I didn't finish writing them, but because I realized that I wanted to tell the story with the songs, with just the songs, and in places where I couldn't fill in details with songs, I would do it with sound effects. Yeah, and that's what I did. And then I was really anxious that it didn't work as well. That if I wasn't like holding the audience's hand through the whole thing and saying, like, this is the story that is happening right now. And I even started drafting up like a short story that was going to go in the liner notes to help fill in the blanks between some of the songs, to kind of like make the narrative a little more fleshed out. But even that I ended up scrapping, because I feel confident that the songs do enough to tell the story, and that if there are holes in there that the audience can't figure out, then great. Then that just gives you another mystery to like work on to try to solve. But I thought one skit at the top and end set to music this time would be enough, and I think it worked. I mean,
I enjoy it. I also like that there are many narrative arcs within even songs. Like Banana Cake, the demo I loved. I think of all of the demos, like that was the one I was like, oh, this is your standard Schäffer goofy ass fare 2/3 of the way through. And then I get to the end and I'm like, oh shit, okay, we're going places. And like, it's just, you pull that bit twice, because you do it again with all of them. But all of them, it comes in really early. And like, you know, what I love about those kinds of songs is I like how Schäffer the rapper and Schäffer the character are two different people sometimes, because you are reacting to, you know, it's acting, obviously it's part of the narrative, but like your reactions in all of them are so good, especially in that first verse when you're like, huh? What? Like, it's just, I have to imagine recording that stuff, those kinds of songs where you're reacting to yourself or you're overlapping yourself, you have to do them a piece at a time. How do you chart that out? Is there like a graph that you make of how everything connects?
Oh yes, I am as an old fella. I'm very tactile, and I write a lot of notes, and my lyrics are handwritten. My to-do lists are handwritten. I have so many digital options for writing these things down, but I have to physically write them. And so, like, writing a song like All of Them, where you have a character who is then having a conversation with this demonic voice in his head. It's all scribbled out, and then it's like the page is just colored with like various highlighters, so I could figure out how to put these pieces together and have it like make sense. I've at times, and it hasn't happened in a while, but at times I've had like cut out chunks of paper and arrange them.
Amazing. I
have to hold physical things for me to make sense of it. But yeah, it's those things are tricky because it's I'm already in a place where I'm trying to arrange just verses and choruses over an instrumental, and then to try to then arrange this conversation in the midst of that makes it a little bit more complicated.
Look, as someone who like struggles when he's editing 4 voices on a podcast, I can't even imagine what that mess looks like in an audio editing program.
Yeah, it was. I mean, that one wasn't so bad. And another thing that's worked about this, I feel like a lot of these songs would have taken months to write if I hadn't been working under the discipline of Patreon. And Patreon has been a godsend for so many reasons, but for the sake of talking about this record, it was because it gave me this discipline and a schedule and a structure. Because if I'm left to my own devices, I will noodle around with a song for a year before I release it, which is why it typically takes me so long to put stuff out. But if I have a month, that I have responded really well to having a monthly schedule. And that's when I get down to that like kind of crunch week. It's like, all right, I have this many minutes of dialogue between these 2 imaginary characters. I have to cut it down because the song has to come out next week. And that has been very helpful.
Well, let's talk about Patreon a little bit and quit the song where is about quitting your day job, which is like, I actually currently enjoy my current day job. I'm doing temp work, but but it's a song that I like. I like this day job because I'm also currently the freelance editor for the Game Informer podcast. And like, I'm doing a ton of really cool editing stuff that's not paying the bills, but it's paying something worthwhile. And so I'm like, all right, I'll do a day job as an EA that's in a good environment for a little while. But that song definitely reminds me of jobs I've had in the past that I've walked out on. And like you quit your day job in 2019 to you started a Patreon. You'd always been a touring artist and a working artist, but you've always had a day job. I remember a point in our original interview back in 2012 was like, I asked you about your day job and you decided not to reveal what it was. You're like, you like to keep the mystery, which I loved. But like, what was the inciting incident to make you want to lean into Patreon and lean into the support of your fans, besides just hating your day job?
I think that was really mostly that I hated my day job. I had been taken care of very well for many years. I had this corporate day job. I worked at a bankruptcy law firm on Wall Street, and it had been great. I was able to go into work and, work for 30% of the day and spend the rest of the time writing lyrics and working on things for my rap act. And I would have to be very selective with my PTO when I would want to go on tour. And I remember I'd done a tour with the Four-Eyed Horsemen before we were using the name Four-Eyed Horsemen, but Frontalot, Lars, and Megaran. I'd done a tour with them, and like in late 2018, and I talked to them about that I was really thinking about leaving my day job. And it was because, like any job that is good for a while, it got restructured and there was new management brought in and things changed. And suddenly all of the sort of like little music related free time perk that I had there had just basically dissolved. And I felt really kind of, not only I know it's weird to complain that like my job wasn't giving me enough free time to do my own stuff, but it was so much more than that. And I felt really insulted and disrespected on a daily basis. And I just kind of, after talking to my peers about it, I got to a point where I was like, this just isn't worth what it's doing to my dignity and what it's doing to my like enthusiasm for everything else. I would come home and I would have no energy to work on music. I would just it would take me hours to like kind of calm down because I'd be stewing about something that I was angry about. And I think it was talking to my peers about it that they were like, yeah, I realized that I could do it. I could do this full time and make it, lucrative and make it a career. And so I took the leap, and I took the leap specifically right before a tour with them.
Yep.
So I like left like a few days before the tour started, so that I didn't even have a chance to think. I just went straight into a tour. It was like, I could do this. And then came home from tour and launched the Patreon, and I haven't looked back.
That's amazing. I love that. I mean, also, you named a bunch of folks who also made those leaps, and like I'm lucky enough to know all of them and have followed their careers and watched them do it. I mean, Mega Ran famously was a teacher and like struggling to do his music, and now he's in the new fucking Clerks movie. So fucking good for him. That's amazing. Like I remember I pulled up the new Ninja Turtles game. I got it on PS5, and like I'm grooving in one of the stages, and then I hear his voice. I'm like, what the holy shit, awesome! Like I just missed that, but like it must have been nice though to have people who have made that leap to kind of talk you through it, because they all more or less have done that.
Yeah, that was really what I needed. It was I needed this kind of roundtable session with a number of other people who'd done it to give me the kind of encouragement that I needed to do. And it was scary to, have a job for 12 years and leave it. But and now, of course, I just spend so much time looking back and being like, I should have done that like 5 to 7 years earlier. Yeah, right. I wasted so much time, but whatever. It's all in the past now. But yeah, and so then as you were saying, on the new album, there is a song encouraging others to quit their day job. And that song isn't even about the job that I left in 2019. It's
about a different one, yeah.
It's about a much older job, yeah.
And all those stories are true, right? About that boss that you sing about?
Yeah, that song was originally, I recorded that in 2006.
Wow.
Yeah, a much different version of it. It was much longer, and the beat was a very different beat, and it was very slow, and it was a very long song because back then I really didn't know how to be terse and write a 16-bar verse. My verses were like 32 bars. And I'd had this instrumental I got from my friend Cool Z, and I wrote this song because at that time I'd had this day job. And the boss that I had at that job was the worst boss that I'd had to that point. And is still the worst boss that I've ever had, and one of the worst people that I've ever known. And I wrote this just furious, angry song about her. But like, the song was never really good enough to record again past the demo stage to put on an album. Like it just felt, I don't know. It didn't really feel like the story that I really wanted to tell on one of my records. Right. And so it just went on the shelf. And then years later, when I was like trying to come up with songs for Patreon, I was like, well, why not? Why don't I write a Quit Your Day Job song? So many of my rapper friends have written a Quit Your Day Job song. And I gave it a shot, and then remembered that I had one in the vault, dug it up, found a new beat, cut the bars way down, but still left in all the material about my boss from 2006, because I still think about what a terrible person she was. And then now waiting that long, it has kind of purpose at a point in the narrative of this concept album. So I'm glad that I didn't rush and release that song earlier.
That's amazing. I mean, well, it's funny, like you talk about having songs forever. I mean, I remember back in the early days hearing Tom Girl way before it ever released. I remember I used to ask you at shows, when am I going to get this on an album? And I guess that just happens when you're making music. You create stuff, you're not sure where to put it. Do you think that now that you have a Patreon, there'll be less of that? You'll see more of a roadmap for future releases? Yeah, I think so. I think, again, because now I have a schedule and I have discipline. Yeah, there was a period from, I've seen videos of me performing in 2010, performing some of the songs that ended up on Sick Passenger 3 years later. And then I would play these songs all the time. And I would have audience members be like, which record is that on? And I'm like, well, you can't get it because it's not out yet. And that was ridiculous that I was 3 years is enough time to test out material on a stage. So I don't think there'll be quite as much of that now, because now once I write a song, I'm more driven to get it finished and move on to the next project as quickly as possible. And if it becomes something that I feel is worthy of performing on stage, so be it. But if not, I'm not going to keep tinkering with it for 2 or 3 years like I'm George Lucas or something. I'm just gonna, it's done. If it's done, it's done. If it's not, then it's not going to get finished. Another thing that's very apparent about this record, one thing I love about Nerdcore and how I've discovered so many of your buddies and your peers, is everyone features on everyone else's record. It's always a pleasure when I pull up a new track from insert nerd rapper here and you're on it or someone else is on it, many of the names we mentioned. On this record, I think your only record with no features. Every other record has had features except this one. There are 0 guests on this album, and that was
also an intentional decision for two reasons. It was important that there weren't any other voices on it because the story is about a character who is alone, lost in space. And so there wouldn't be reason to have somebody else. Like, it wouldn't be reason to have like Mega Ran come in and add his thoughts to what he thinks about seeing a giant ghost ship. So yeah, it was an intentional decision for two reasons. And one was because to suit the narrative. And then two, I've never had a record where I could perform every song live. And I feel like I've done that a lot in the past, where I've had a song that I really, really liked, and I really, really liked the guest's part on it. But then to perform it live, I've got to cut it way down to like a minute or so, or make a medley out of it, or just not perform it at all, because I'm not always going to have access to the guests on the record. And so I feel very pleased that I have a record that I could literally perform every song from live. It sucks. I miss hearing my friends' voices on it. And
sure,
I think as an audience member, I would probably find it tedious after a while if I bought a rapper's record and I only heard that rapper's voice for the duration of the album. But I think the benefits in the other direction outweigh that.
I mean, I would argue against that. I think that I'm buying a Schäffer The Darklord record. I want to hear Schäffer The Darklord. If I hear other people, great. But like, buying the record because it's your record, you know?
Well, I would. That's what I would like to hope. I would like to hope people are coming because they're like, oh my God, there's another record with a Mega Ran feature on it. I hope they're coming for the guy whose name is on the front.
Look, as a podcaster who deals in guests on a lot of his shows, like,
sure.
I get it. Like, what you want to bring people on to expand your audience and all of that stuff. But like, it does really suit the isolation. I noticed it pretty early. I was like, oh, it's just Schäffer on this one. There's no one else here, which absolutely suits the narrative. Let's talk about this concept a little bit. So obviously, the broad concept is this is about a artist enrolled in a program to describe a ship that cannot be photographed or recorded in any way. He's recruited into this program, and then at the last second has high regrets as he realizes he's going to be alone with a computer on a ship for an indeterminate amount of time. And immediately regrets it, which is such an artist mood. Yeah, I'll do the thing. Absolutely.
Sure.
And then oh no, I've made a mistake.
Yeah.
and then the album progresses as we get to watch, or listen at least, this astronaut lose his mind clearly over the course of the album, into the point where he returns changed. Obviously, there are secrets here. Obviously, there are Easter eggs. I've noticed, like, and I guess this is where it's in the Mission Control song where the Russian and the Chinese are as well, I'm guessing. I have no idea what they're saying. I don't speak those languages. And I'm sure if I look it up, I will get some interesting things. But, like, those kinds of things, like, obviously you made a little bit of an Easter egg hunt. That must have been a lot of fun to kind of put together, like, I wonder if anyone will get this. Will anyone notice this thing I put in?
Sure. Yeah. And I love doing stuff like that. I love doing stuff with that in just one-off songs that aren't, highly conceptual, I love putting in little Easter eggs and little nods just to kind of reward some of the like super fans out there who will listen to a song of mine, like line by line. And then they'll hit me up and be like, I noticed that you said this, were you referencing this? And that's very satisfying when that pays off. But if I'm telling a concept album and it's kind of a dark fantasy concept album, then I went a little hog wild and I littered it with little Easter eggs to kind of decode the story and see like, well, what actually happened to this guy this artist who volunteered for the civilian space program to track down his own, like, I don't know, Moby Dick in space, so to speak. And yeah, that was a lot of fun. I can tell you there aren't any secrets hidden in the Russian and Chinese dialogue on the album. They're both astronauts who are so prior to the album starting, NASA has discovered that there is this disabled extraterrestrial spaceship floating adrift within our atmosphere. Seems to be abandoned. It doesn't seem to be operational. It's been spotted by these other astronauts who have seen it, but they can't photograph it. They can't see it through a telescope. You can only see it directly. And so now NASA is recruiting civilians, specifically artists, because artists are better at describing things than astronauts. So when we have these flashbacks and we hear the Russian and Chinese astronauts, they're freaking out and they're panicking because, like, oh my God, here's evidence of life on other worlds, but their descriptions are just like, it's so big and long and it's dark and I'm scared. Like there's really nothing in there other than just these really vague descriptions that would suit no space program well to enhance their sort of mission to explore this.
Right.
And that's really it. In fact, I think they say roughly. I think the two parts say roughly the same thing. I gave them the same script and had them translate it, and then send me back the translated version after they had written it.
Amazing.
But yeah, they're just very simple descriptions from scared astronauts.
Have you heard anyone? Has anyone come to you and be like, "Oh, I found this thing," or "I spotted that thing"? Are there things that you think people will never find?
There's always things that people never find. There are things that people still haven't found on Sick Passenger, but then I realized they were too dense, and maybe they're not real Easter eggs and they're not real clues. It's just something that's just like a deep inside joke for me.
Sure.
But on this one, I feel like a couple of people have asked me very pointed questions about this and impressed me with their theories, but I can't think of a concrete example of that right now.
That's fair. I mean, like I said, like I'm kind of a layman, and like I get the overarching narrative, but like the nitty gritty, I still haven't really gotten that deep yet. Like, I for example, like Ghost Ship obviously sounds like it's about a sailing like on the sea ship, but it's obviously also about this ship that's in the atmosphere. And I love the comparative language because it clearly sounds like someone sailing on the high seas, but yet it is vague enough that it absolutely can apply to this ghost ship in the atmosphere as well. And like, I love that this could be the astronaut's hallucination. Like, he imagines he's a pirate because he's lost his mind or something. Like, I love those kinds of details in this. Or like, again, like in all of them, this conversation with himself about everyone being dead. Well, who's dead? Who's everyone? Is it everyone on Earth? Is it everyone on that ship? Is it everyone on another planet? Like, all of that stuff. Like, that's my immediate thought, because you're obviously, the song itself in isolation is about our world, like being able to go out and do all this stuff because fuck everybody else. They're all dead. But it's more to it than that, I think.
Yeah, there is. Ghost Ship, which I released as a Halloween song on my Patreon a couple of years ago. That one, I mean, it started off like, I knew that was going to be kind of a centerpiece for this album, because Ghost Ship is just a synonym for the derelict craft.
Right.
And so I wrote it from this perspective of a man at sea, talking about like a crumbling ship on the ocean, because I didn't want to give away the story. I didn't want to be like, I'm in space and I'm looking at this spaceship. But it also, I really leaned into it because I feel both on this record and in Sick Passenger, there's a narrative motif where the narrator is trying to make sense of things that are really challenging and really difficult to like kind of process, powerful kind of like emotional, heavy moments, but can't really wrap his head around it, and instead has to resort to this kind of like childlike fantasy to make sense of things. And that is very much who I am as a person. And I feel that rears its head throughout the record, you know, when I'm like, oh my God, here I am, I'm actually facing this abandoned spaceship. Well, but I'm not. I'm a sailor man, and I'm on the ocean and I'm doing this. See, look at me, I'm Popeye. Ha ha ha. Like there's a lot of that going on. Or at one point, after, you know, at the point where he's been in isolation for who knows how long at this point, he starts imagining like, well, I'm all alone, but what if I am entirely alone? What if I'm the only living person anywhere? And like, maybe that's a way he's trying to cope with this decision that he's made that has sent him on this suicide mission into deep space where he was going to die alone. Maybe he's just imagining like, well, if I were on Earth, I would do all of this crazy stuff because I'm the only living person. I'm the only one left. And I feel that is kind of, that is the narrative element that really kind of ties the two records together, in that like there's a lot of this kind of childlike fantasizing to make sense of a world that is too terrifying to really understand.
Sure. I mean, I'm reminded of Giant Iron Snake and like,
like
that idea of like, this is a fantasy song about someone slaying a beast. Oh no, it's about a guy on a train. And like, especially as someone living in New York, it's like it just felt so real because like we've all daydreamed on a train, we've all daydreamed in our lives. And so like I love that you kind of blew that scale up and like, well, what if someone was really literally losing their mind and not just having a panic attack or struggling with their life? And it adds so much to it. Like even the creepiness with Beth at the very end during Mission Complete is like, you're just very good at those codas. And so I just want you to know that I appreciate the narrative in these records. I love all of your music, but I think as a music listener, I like albums. I feel like not enough people like listening to full albums.
Here.
And I feel like this is concept albums are a reward for people who like listening to albums from start to finish. And especially this record, I think I could listen to some of these songs in isolation for sure, like Banana Cake and Going to Space, but like a lot of them also just feel so integral to this record that it would be weird to listen to them out of order. You know, I do want to talk about the drummer a bit.
Okay.
I alluded to it earlier. So you are obviously playing drums on this track.
Mm-hmm.
I know you talk about it now on stage every so often, but like a lot of folks don't know that you were in a punk band for a long time. You played drums for a long time. I've seen the photos of your Johnny Rotten look, like you going way back. So like, something like the drummer you must have wanted to do for a while.
Oh my God, for so long. I have, and wait, I'll come back to that other point. Yeah, it is something I've wanted to do for a long time. My musical career started early on playing drums in punk and metal bands. And that was always such a huge part of my life. And I haven't done it since I moved to New York, basically. I played in like a couple of tribute bands briefly, but I've never really been a drummer again because it's not like, you know, where I lived in other places where I could have a drum set in my house and just play when I wanted to. So I'd gotten rid of my drums and I just kind of didn't look back, but I would make references and I'd make jokes on stage about drummers for the sake of other musicians. But it's always been kind of gnawing at me that like, you know, I see so many rappers who also play instruments like Chesky, for example, who will like get on stage and then can like break out a guitar and play the guitar along with the rapping. And I was always like, well, I can't really do that because, you know, drums are so cumbersome and drums are, I can't actually have them, but I want them so bad because I know that if I had access to them, I could figure out how to rap and drum at the same time. Right before quarantine started, I got January 2020, I got really excited about this idea and was wanting to pursue it. And so I reached out to my dear friend Emma Story, who I knew had an old electronic drum kit, and reached out to her to say like, hey, do you still have this? Because I'm thinking about expanding my musical act and adding this element to it. And she gave me this old electronic drum kit.
That's amazing.
And it changed my life. And it couldn't have come at a more perfect time. So I get to spend quarantine and all this time like making Patreon content, just like playing songs, getting like drumless instrumentals of songs that I knew from the internet, remixing songs of mine and mixing the drums out so that I could like play along while rapping, and kind of taught myself how to do that. And all of this was really kind of building up to writing this song, The Drummer, which I'd always wanted to write a rap anthem for drummers and include all these kind of like inside jokes about being a drummer that are often made at the expense of drummers. But it was important to me that I do that while actually playing the instrument. And so I think I probably started writing a few bars for a song about drummers years ago, but it had to wait until I could actually execute it the way I wanted to. And so that song, it's very personal to me because so many of the jokes in there were jokes that were made at my expense by my bandmates and all those bands that I'd played in for years. And now I feel like I got a whole new musical act out of quarantine and out of, you know, Emma Story's generosity and out of exploring this instrument, because now I travel with an electronic drum kit so I can perform not the whole set. I still gotta like run around like a lunatic, but I do have an electronic drum kit on stage to play a number of songs on drums.
That's amazing. This is the thing I was going to ask, because you're about to go on tour, I believe, with Lars, correct?
Yeah.
And so will you be playing the drummer live with your drum kit?
Yeah. Well, either with my drum kit. We're also touring with a band called I Fight Dragons.
Oh, right. So maybe.
So I might, I'm going to hit them up and ask them if I could just borrow their drum kit for one song every night.
That would be fun.
It would make it a lot easier than stuffing my stuff in the van. But if not, I've gotten very good at traveling with my electronic drum kit. So one way or another, I'll be doing it. I'll definitely be playing the drummer on this tour.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's fun. It's so much fun to be playing again. And again, so the thing that I the thought that I stepped away from a second ago is that was also when I originally was coming up with the concept of the album about, and I was using this kind of double entendre of the derelict craft and thinking that like maybe my own skills as like a musician have kind of atrophied and that I need to like do something new with it. That was going to be part of it. It was like, oh, I got to have a song where I play drums, because it's like, now I'm going to try out some new styles of like hip hop that I haven't really done before, but I also want to go back to my past and like revisit my instrument. And I ended up getting it on there.
I love that. I do want to talk about Never a little bit, your doo-wop song. See, for me, knowing you and the nerd you are, I just think David Lynch when I hear that song. I know it may not have any connection to David Lynch, but I could absolutely see it in a David Lynch film, like especially some of his older stuff. Like,
because he loves juxtaposing those like pretty 50s doo-wop songs with horrible visuals. Yeah.
Yeah. And so like, but it's so fun that song is fun for me in particular because you've toyed with stuff on that, like, you know, on Sex Rhymes, you had a song that was kind of out, you know, a little poppier and like kind of a storytelling song. And like, this fits that kind of era. When writing that kind of a song versus other rap songs, is it easier or harder? Does the shtick make it different, or is it just kind of all the same kind of writing process?
It's all pretty much the same kind of writing process. I don't feel like that one was as challenging to write because I didn't feel like I stepped out that far. Just because like I love that kind of music, I just don't really make it. But writing the content for it was very easy. It's a very list kind of song. Like here's just a list of things that I've never done. So it's literally starting with a physical list and then just arranging them into lyric wasn't terribly difficult. I felt like the writing of that one went very, very quickly and very easily, actually. I mean, compared to a lot of the other ones, I feel like that song was very easy to write.
I'm curious what it's like to be a hip hop trendsetter, writing songs about both pockets.
I am too. I'm also curious about this.
About pockets and coffee, and then having your peers put out songs about pockets and coffee.
Did that happen?
So on Beefy's new record, he has a song about pockets.
What?
Or a song called Pocket.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's true.
And I believe I thought it was Kill or maybe Beefy again put out a coffee song. I think it was.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah. You know,
I
just blazing paths.
I never considered. I guess I think like if peers of mine and I write songs with similar topics, that we write songs that we make them our own from our own point of view.
Course.
I don't necessarily think that like I had inspired them, unless it's Michael Kill. Then I'm going to be like, yeah, you lifted that from me. just because my life involves a pretty steady dose of antagonizing Michael Kill.
I mean, whose doesn't really? You know, I'm just reminded of the incredible story. You know, talking about Kill and talking about being a trendsetter, like writing, what is it, Sinking Ship, and like starting your verses the same way without speaking to each other. It's still one of those stories that like every time Kill tells it, I go, that's bullshit. There's no way that's real, and it is, and I just love that.
That is 100% true. He sent me a song 8 years ago, and he was like, here's the concept, and I wrote my verse, and then he wrote his verse, and they both start with the words, "It's been 10 years since." And it just worked out. And I feel like that song has a little bit like deserves a little credit for Ghost Ship in the end, because I really enjoyed like having to collect a bunch of like nautical references and writing a song about a man at sea going mad.
Right.
So yeah, shout out to Kill. After antagonizing Kill, I'll say thank you for helping to inspire my song.
There you go. I would love to hope that Kill listens to this, but he has no time to listen. He's got a life and other things to do. He doesn't listen to this. Even though he wrote the theme song for the show, the current theme song for the show is a Michael Kill original. Yeah. I was using Yo Into New York by Malibu Shark Attack for a long time. With their blessing, I reached out to Tribe One and asked, and he gave me his blessing on behalf of the band. And then I tried uploading stuff to YouTube, and it kept getting flagged because I didn't have permission to use that song according to YouTube. And so after that started happening, I went, "Hey, Kill, how much could I pay you to write me an awesome song?" And like then he asked me the question. I'm not a musician. I've written lyrics once, and I have never written a song. And like Kill asked, "So what do you want it to sound like?" And I went, "I don't know."
I wanted to sound cool.
Yeah. I mean, I told him like something rock and roll, something kind of drum and bass. And I mean, the song is incredible and I'm so thankful for it. But like, I never get more gun shy than when an artist goes, well, what do you want? And I go, yeah, I don't know. Like, I just...
Yeah, and that is not like just like lacking the language to answer that question is not indicative of just like, you not being a musician, because I am a musician and I still find myself in positions like that. Like I'm Facebook friends with a guy who's like a recording engineer, not like me, like an amateur recording engineer, but like an actual recording engineer. Yeah. And he was made a post where he was just like taking like questions from people about things. And I was like, can you recommend, I'm thinking about like upgrading my vocal microphone to something else for recording, not for live. And he was like, yeah, what do you want it to sound like? And I was like, I don't know the language to use. So I started I was like, brighter, warmer. I don't know what to say. And he was just like so frustrated. He wouldn't even answer my question because he was like, I'm not dealing with this amateur nonsense. And I'm like, you gotta dial it down for civilians, fella.
We don't all have the answers.
Yeah.
Oh man.
You should have just told Kill. Yeah, I want it to sound awesome.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. And he delivered, so it works out. Michael Kill, a person who I yelled at when he put out his surf rock record and went, how dare you make an album that sounds so good? You've got some goddamn nerve. Being a rapper who also makes really great surf rock. But back to your stuff and your music. I want to talk about the pantheon of your stuff. Like, you've had a multitude of records. You have songs that you've rewritten and adjusted for the live show to be less shitty teenager mentality, more grown. Yeah. Which I appreciate and is an incredible thing to do as an artist. How do you see the live show going this year? You're going to be in Brooklyn in November. I'm very excited for that, and because I haven't seen you perform live in a while. But for this tour, how do you envision it? Are you going to play a lot of this record? Are you going to mix and match? I mean, a lot of bands, when they go on tour, it's like you go to see the old stuff, but of course they're going to shill the new stuff because that's what they're touring on. And I, as a fan, usually like the new stuff, unless you're Green Day or Blink-182. I don't know why I took shots at them specifically, but I feel like it works. But what do you envision your structure being like for this tour?
Wow, that's a really good question, because I have not figured that out yet. I've done a lot of touring in the past year. Last fall I did a couple of months with the Four-Eyed Horsemen, and we had very, very democratic. We had a rotating lineup every night. So we took turns, like a different person would headline every night. So that would change kind of how the sets were. But I was used to like touring with those guys and doing, like dialing in like an opening set, which would be like maybe a couple of new things to kind of tease the audience. But the things that I thought were like my strongest audience reactions that would get an audience hype if I were the first person on a show.
Right.
And so it would span most of my catalog. This past spring, I did a tour where I was headlining, and that was a lot more difficult because I realized I needed a lot more. First of all, I had to do a lot more time,
right.
But I had to like really kind of reward some of those diehards who came out by like, playing some of the songs that I don't like anymore. I made a medley of like a bunch of old songs and was like, here you go. Here's a number of old songs. And now as for this, now that I'm going to be going back as a support act again, it's hard to say because part of me wants to say like, I'm going to be playing a lot of cities that I've played multiple times in the past year. And so part of me wants to like cash in on the novelty of having an album that I can perform live and just perform stuff from the new record and say like, here's a different set than I had last time when I was in town. This is just my new album. But I know that I can't do that. Like, not because they'll be unhappy, but I know that I will be unhappy. I know that at some point I'll be like, I'm going to feel like I'm cheating them if I don't play something that's a little older that they know. So I don't know. I feel like it's probably, my sets on this tour are probably going to lean into the new record, but there'll be a couple of songs from previous records.
Yeah.
But I don't know what they're going to be yet. I have no idea.
I mean, but the great thing about this record is it can literally be any song because they're all your songs. You don't have to worry about trying to do Buckets of Blood by yourself with a track or whatever it is. Or like, famously you have a song that samples Beverly Hills that you used to do with the incredible Adam Warrock that now you restructured to do on your own because it's a really great song. You don't have to worry about any of that with this record because it's all you.
Yeah, and it's weird because it's like normally I'll put out a record and there will be songs that I can't perform live because either like there's too many vocal punch-ins and that everything overlaps and so there's nowhere to breathe, or there's a guest on it and so I don't have access to the guest, then I can't perform it. But sometimes I just put out a record and it'll have songs on it that like I just don't like. And I know that I'm pretty harsh on my material like after it's been released, but I release stuff that I already don't like sometimes just because I want to pad out that record. I have a record called Manslaughter that is like 50% songs that I went into it being like, this song's bullshit. Now I'm in this position where I've got like a new record out and I like all of the songs and I can perform all of them live and I am technically should be touring in support of a new album. So I want to do as much stuff from the new album as possible, but I'm still going to throw in a couple of old ones.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's interesting also that you had this pattern often of showing your face on your record covers, like cartoon versions, actual versions. This is the first record where your face is nowhere to be found on that front cover.
I am on the back cover.
You are on the back cover, though, with a glorious beard,
Yes.
Which is your real beard. You grew a incredibly impressive beard during quarantine.
Yeah. While I was like working on the record, I grew the beard because I wanted a picture of me sort of mad on this spaceship with like a big, thick, like castaway beard, but I didn't want to fake it with Photoshop and I didn't want to wear like a fake beard. So I spent like months growing it just to get that one picture. And I did.
It's very impressive.
It was great. It sucked growing that. I've never grown a beard like that before, and I don't think I will again. That was a lot of maintenance. There's so much food in it.
Oh my God. Yeah.
But it looked legit, and it helped me. I feel like it helped me get into the mindset of just feeling like a crazy sailor lost at sea. Was I wandered around my apartment talking to myself with this giant Tom Hanks castaway beard.
Something Sarah, my partner, used to do when I had a beard was they would stroke my beard thoughtfully because they didn't have a beard to stroke thoughtfully, so they would stroke mine instead. Which is one of my fondest memories of having a beard. Which I
that is but one of the benefits of having a partner,
right? Absolutely.
Yeah. She gained access to a thoughtfully strokable beard.
I want to talk about your live shows a little bit during the Patreon era, especially when it first started. Like, it was clear that you were made to do this kind of stuff. And I mean, I'd known your tech savviness. I knew, I'd watched you perform at burlesque shows and all sorts of live stuff for so many years. But there was something so fun about watching it go from, I'm just going to yell at you through a microphone for an hour, to production and incorporating your friends, the incredible Bunny Buxom and Nelson Lugo, who's just fine. I love you, Nelson, who's also not going to listen to this episode. But I loved watching the production value go up and costumes and themes. That must have been a lot of fun. Must have been like playing dress up and cosplaying.
I'm so glad you asked this question because it was a lot of fun. At the beginning of pandemic, everybody was doing Zoom parties and everybody was doing live streaming shows. And so those were fun. For the first couple of months, I was like, I can do a set in my living room and just kind of hang out. But then after a month, it was like, well, maybe I need to start doing them in front of a green screen. Maybe I need to put green screens in my windows. Maybe I need to do costume changes. Maybe I need to pre-tape some segments of it. And it was like every month I felt this kind of pressure to outdo the thing I did the month before and keep delivering bigger and bigger shows. For almost a year and a half there, I was doing 2 live stream shows a month because I was doing my own on Patreon, and then I was doing a ticketed one with Lars, Frontalot, and Megaran. And so there was also, I felt this kind of pressure, I'm going to show these guys up every month. Every month I'm going to bring a crazier show. This one's in black and white and I'm playing Jimmy Stewart's character from the film Harvey. They just got weirder and weirder. So now those aren't happening as frequently because we've started going back on the road. I haven't done a solo one in a while, and the Four-Eyed Horsemen are only doing them we're doing a couple a year. We did one for the winter holidays last year. We did one over Valentine's Day this year. and we haven't announced it yet, and we haven't actually nailed down a date, but we're doing one in October for Halloween. And when we stopped doing the regular ones, I had a long list to go that I was working my way through. I just kept coming up with ideas.
Right.
Like, it started when I did like a feature-length Star Wars show with narrative, sound effects, and character costume changes, and lightsaber duels, and the opening crawl and everything. And then for Four-Eyed Horseman a little while later, I did an Indiana Jones show, which Lugo had wanted to do like a duo cosplay as Sala and Indy for a while. So I just wrote a show around it, and we did it, and I ran from the big rolling boulder and everything. But there's been like a couple things on that list that I never got to take care of. And now that I know that there's a possibility of doing a show in October, and I really want to do it right, I started working on this show in July. I'm working on it right now. In July, I started putting together props and costumes. In August, beginning of August, I was drawing storyboards and writing a script. And in the past couple of weeks, I've started shooting it so that I've got plenty of time to work on other projects, but I can also give this the kind of care and attention it needs. And I have not said anything about it anywhere.
Amazing.
But I'm playing 12 characters in it.
What? Oh,
yeah.
Hell yeah.
And I think it's something that all of my fans and people who aren't fans of mine are going to be pretty excited about. I'll tell you once we're not recording.
Okay.
I'll tell you if you want to. Can you add a bleep?
I could add a bleep. Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. I'm going to say it, but I'm going to say it just to you, and it better be bleeped out.
It will be, I promise.
It's
amazing. I will bleep that out.
Thank you.
I recently learned how to bleep because apparently the Game Informer show is a family show, but the host still curses like a sailor, and so I've had to learn how to bleep out in the edit. So I will absolutely bleep that out. But I'm very excited. And also, listener, if you know Schäffer and you know Nelson, you know what this is. You'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Like, it's not rocket science. I do also, while we're talking about the live show, want to talk about possibly the only mistake you made while performing live, which was when you might have performed a little song called House Tickle Pfeiffer on endless loop for what was it, an hour?
Yeah, an hour.
The same song for an hour.
Yeah, I wrote, like this is, I think, 2019. Mm-hmm. I wrote a holiday song that sampled the music and some dialogue from A Christmas Story.
Yep.
And the song's called House Tickle Pfeiffer, which is based on how I interpreted. There are those portions of the movie where like Ralphie and his dad like swear a lot, but they wanted to get a PG rating, so they couldn't swear a lot. So he's just reciting a bunch of nonsense. And in that mess of nonsense, I swear he says House Tickle Pfeiffer. So that's why I called the song that. Every year over on Christmas Eve, forever, TBS has run 24 hours of A Christmas Story. They just run that movie continuously for 24 hours. So I did a gimmick that Christmas season of 2019 where I just performed the song. It's like my first live streaming show. So no effects, no production at all, just me in my living room. And I performed the song like repeatedly once after another, over and over and over for an hour with costume changes and stuff while still doing the song.
Amazing. And do you remember what the final count was of how many times you performed it?
It was 21. I did 21 times.
Amazing.
And not doing that again.
No, I can't imagine you'd ever want to.
No, I'll perform the song again,
sure,
but not 21 times in a row.
No, it's a great song. I don't know that like I said, I love all your music. I don't know that I want to hear any of your songs 21 times in a row. I
enjoy performing some of my songs, but I don't enjoy performing any of them 21 times in a row. That's why I hate recording, is because it's just performing the same song again 21 times in a row with no audience to tell you what a good boy you are.
Right, exactly. That only comes from the live experience.
And I didn't even get that on that. There was just a lot of people being like,
"What is happening? Someone stop this man! He's hurting himself." I'm curious. So after Sick Passenger came out, you released a remix album. You've released several remixes over the years. Are there any plans to work on remixes for this record? Are there any plans?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I had figured as much.
I am planning to. I still have, I'm still not out of the woods with this record yet. I still have to. I'm still working on Kickstarter fulfillment, and I'm still working on the vinyl release.
Right.
I mean, my work for the vinyl release is done. I'm just waiting on it.
Yeah.
But there's still more work to be done on this record. Once I get to the other side of everything and I feel like the record is finished, probably in early next year, I'm going to do like I did with the Remix Passenger album, where I'm going to crowdsource a bunch of beat makers and remixers that I know and be like, you can call dibs on any song on this record. Here's a remix kit. And then I'm going to get remixes of every track on the album and release that on Bandcamp. But yeah, I'm definitely planning to do that again.
It was awesome. I remember what was interesting about the Remix Passenger was like, you also called for the skits. I remember early on, Sarah and I were going to do one, and then we had to back out due to complications. And then, of course, the incredible Charles Stunning and Mark Turner did that skit instead, and they did a great job. But like, even what people did with the skits was incredible. And so like,
yeah,
I thought that was such a brilliant idea to just go, all right, fuckers, it's all yours. Do something.
And I didn't give any preference. It was first come, first serve. I made an announcement like, hey, I want to remix my whole record. Here are all the tracks. First person who responds, call dibs, and you get that song. And that's launched a band. Did you know that?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, because when I pitched that, Brian Beaker Kissel.
Oh yeah, I know Brian
from the Nerd Corps. Yeah. He had like responded saying like, "Oh, I would love to remix one of these songs. I'm going to get DJ Roborob to help me out with it," and that became the genesis of their group Crayon Droids.
I didn't know that inspired Crayon Droids. Mm-hmm. In my head, I just assumed they'd always existed because I'd seen them everywhere for a while. That's amazing. I didn't know that was the inception for them. That's so cool.
That was it. They remixed the opener for that record, and that started their band.
I also love how slowly over the life of that record, you started replacing the regular tracks with a lot of the remixes.
Yeah.
Which is always fun.
In the live show? Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I got so many remixes that I like better. I got a remix on that record that I liked so much better than the album version that when time came, when I was working on this new record, The Derelict Craft, I had a song that I made a demo of for Patreon that had just sampled this like indie noise band that I'd loved in the 90s. I remembered that Untested Methods had remixed a song from, he'd remixed Giant Iron Snake for the remix record. And I liked his version so much better than the album version that when I was making The Derelict Craft and I needed a new beat for my Patreon demo, I just reached out to him being like, you killed it with the Giant Iron Snake. Do that again. And that's my favorite track on the new record. Is the beat that he made for Everything's Broken. That's amazing. Everything Broken is great. It's like, I just was not expecting that level of like a punk song on your record. And it's just like that clacka. Like it's fun. It's just so much fun to listen to and to sing along to. That's like, I love any rap song I can also thrash to. So I'll take it. Sure. Before we wrap up, I want to ask you a question that I've been asking a lot of folks, and I have a feeling I know what the answer is. But during the pandemic, which is, God, I hope almost over, please get vaccinated, please get boosted, please wear a mask. But during this time, there's been a lot of shit that's happened. It's been hard for everyone on a multitude of different levels. But I like focusing on the good, on the positive, on the silver lining. And so I'm curious, what's a standout silver lining to you during that time? Even though the pandemic sucked, something that might not have happened without the pandemic, or something that would have been much harder to foresee or envision without the pandemic, like something good that came out of that time. This is not a very popular opinion, but I have said this a number of times. I'm going to say it again. I kind of enjoyed pandemic. I mean, I already had this issue where I wanted to be left alone all the time, and I didn't want to have to deal with social engagements. I was like required to stay home and meet deadlines to make art for Patreon. I wouldn't have made this record on this schedule had it not been for the pandemic. I wouldn't have learned all of the sort of like video editing effects that I learned for all the live streaming shows had it not been for the pandemic. I wouldn't have a beautiful new purple bedroom had it not been. You have a purple bedroom? Amazing. Yeah. Brilliant. Bunny and I painted it purple like at the beginning of the pandemic. Hell yeah. So I mean, I know that it was terrible, and like a lot of us lost our like livelihood. We just had to figure out other ways to make it work. But really, I didn't. I mean, it got a little tedious there near the end. Like, and I know we're still in it. I have to catch myself. Yeah. I shouldn't talk about the pandemic in the past tense. It is still going on, but I should say the time before I went back on the road, and after I've been back on the road, and that time before, it got a little tedious right before I finally got to go on tour again. But really, I thought it was a pretty good deal for me. I mean, you're not alone there. Like, I'm an indoor kid. It's funny. I watch it with Sarah. Sarah is an absolute extrovert, and I am an extrovert till the minute I'm not, and then I'm an introvert. And like,
being at home and having all this time to play video games and work on podcasts. I mean, right before the pandemic, I used to host and DJ into the burlesque scene for a long time, probably longer than I should have. And I eventually, like towards the beginning of the pandemic in that January, I was like, I think I'm going to take a break. I want to focus on podcasts. I've been doing podcasts for a long time and I've never made them my thing, but I do so many and I want to do more. And like, so in January I took a step back and then everything went to shit like a month or two later. So I made a good choice. But like, then when I did that, like just like this ended up on a new network. The other shows that I was doing the audience have grown. I'm going to PAX West this week, as of when we're recording, on a media pass for my video game podcast. Like, none of that would have happened without the pandemic. And so I totally understand. I think for artists especially, it allowed us to kind of take a moment to refocus and go, oh, that's what's important. Like, that's how I make this work. And like, now that I'm doing a day job again, I've found a way to make it work. I'm balancing it. It's a little hectic, but like, I don't think I could have done that if it weren't for the pandemic and this time of being like, I like being home.
Yeah.
You know, I like having this time to play the entire Yakuza franchise over the course of a year, which if you have not played is one of the best video game series ever.
I've heard.
It's the best, dumbest thing I've ever played because it's both dramatic and incredibly stupid. I highly recommend. But yeah, I agree. I think it was different for everybody, but I'm so grateful that you had this time. I think this is your best work, easily.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I like to think so too, but it's nice to hear from somebody else, especially somebody else who is familiar with the rest of my catalog, to kind of confirm that. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. I like being rewarded for listening to a whole album. That doesn't get me wrong. I'm eagerly awaiting Junk Drawer 4 whenever that happens because I love those records. Too. Oh, I know. Because I love those. My favorite thing about the Junk Drawer albums is what you cover because like In the Air Tonight, I never expected and I absolutely loved. It's just the most batshit version of that song, but it's so good because it's just... I can't believe Schäffer's doing In the Air Tonight, you know?
I can't believe I built the entire instrumental with keyboards and like I did that before I had an electronic drum kit. So part of me is always like, oh man, I did that too soon.
I could have done that so much easier.
Yeah. There'll be a lot more of those for sure.
Cool. But yeah, no, I love the Derelict Craft. I encourage folks to go listen to it. Before I have you do our sign off and wrap up the show, please tell folks where they can, the best place to find the Derelict Craft, the best place to find you online if you wish to be found. But yeah, promo your stuff. Tell folks where to find it.
The best place to track me down is at schäferthedarklord.com. My website is basically just a list of links that'll send you to a number of places where you can hear my new album, The Derelict Craft. There's a link to Bandcamp. There's a link to Spotify, but it's on all of the streaming services. You can get it on Apple Music. It's everywhere. But yeah, get it and then stream it continuously until you pass out from the terror of listening to an album that many times in a row.
I mean, my favorite thing to do with all of my rapper friends is buy their album on Bandcamp or physically, and then just never listen to that version. Listen to only the Spotify version. So I'm sending them little bits of money anyway.
My dude.
Yeah, that's the hack. That's how you do it.
You are a hero to our people.
Well, thank you again, Schäffer. It's so great to catch up with you. It's been too long. I'm very excited to see you live in November. Before we wrap up the show, we have a saying that carries over from my now on indefinite hiatus music review podcast, which you were a guest on at one point. I say indefinite hiatus because there's the hope, there's the dream that someday Steve, John, and I will get back together. Though it's been as many years that we had been doing it that we've not been doing it now. We just talked about that recently, and I'm like, oh, time. But the saying is music is life and life is good. It's this idea that as long as you're creating, as long as you're making stuff, as long as you're doing things, no matter how hard life gets, that kind of creative energy will pull you through. So if you could say music is life and life is good, we'll wrap up the show.
Music is life and life is good.
That's it for this episode of CPOV Autographs. Our theme music is by Michael Kill. Our logo was designed by Case Aiken and Joey Amons. If you liked the show, please rate and review wherever you get your podcasts. It's a great way to help us reach more listeners. Questions, comments, or guest recommendations? Email mr.matt.storm@gmail.com or hit us up on Twitter at CPOV Autographs. Thank you so much for listening.
Have you ever sat on a long commute or a dull day in the office and let your mind wander back to the days of rectangle pizza, bowls and bowls of sugar cereal, and gushing over your favorite cartoons and movies in school, and worry that those favorites from childhood won't hold up today? Well, the Saturday Morning Confidential podcast answers those questions for you. Host Maddie Limerick sits down with artists and creators of today to pull back the veil of nostalgia to talk about what's great and what we would change in hindsight years later. So pull on your comfiest PJs, pour yourself a bowl of your favorite cereal, and take a deep dive into the files of Saturday Morning Confidential. Releasing bi-weekly on Saturdays, available on your favorite podcast platforms and at certainpov.com.
CPOV.
CertainPOV.com.